you have to take into account your individual situation, the number of weapons that you have, the layout of your house, where you spend the most time in your house, the threat profile that you're living against. If you live in a nice suburb with very low crime rates, there's a low chance of it being viciously attacked. If we live in a society that's broken down with roving bands of outlaws, that's a whole different story.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
I'd like to jump into a few of our viewers' questions. We've invited our viewers to submit specific questions that they wanted us to address with you, and so I'd like to touch on a few of those. One of them is related to unarmed self-defense. This comes from Josiah J., who asks, what is your best recommendation and technique for how to reduce the risk of an unarmed attacker rushing at you? If you already do have someone who is attacking you, who is rushing at you, what are the steps you should take to reduce the risk to yourself or your family?
Okay. The question being, what should you do if you have an attacker rushing at you? The biggest thing is going to be distance. So the distance at which the attacker is going to determine your course of action. And what I mean by that, and this is a very important point, in the middle of a fight, your ability to make decisions is physiologically restricted due to the adrenaline dump. So you have to do what we call create a conditioned response. What a conditioned response is a stimulus, a physical or visual stimulus that automatically connects to a physical action. One of the questions that I received often as a SEAL is, what is it like to be in combat? And what I've said is the most relaxed I've ever been, the biggest sense of calm has always been in the worst conflict. And the reason being is I can turn my brain off when I'm in that type of a conflict because I'm relying completely on the stimulus response, the conditioned responses that have been programmed into me. I don't have to make a decision. And that's why it ties back to training. So what you're going to do is tie specific reactions to different distances of an attacker. If an attacker is within 6 feet, so that's about double arm distance away, and they're rushing towards you, the best thing to do, and this is counterintuitive, that's why it has to be trained, is to close the distance. So you want to rush towards them, not away. If someone is 6 feet away and they rush towards you and you start backing up, they're always going to win that foot race. Someone rushing forward is always going to win someone rushing backwards. So by closing the distance, you're going to surprise them and turn their offensive action into a defensive action. You want to put them into that overstimulated state where they're planning, their ability to come up with new plans of action go away. We teach a retention shooting position where the offhand, so the hand that isn't the primary hand on the firearm, on the pistol, goes up behind the head. So you would take, I'm a right-handed person, I take the palm of my left hand, thumb down, and put it on the back of my head with my arm along the side of my head, elbow pointing forward. That protects my head and actually gives me a good charging point. You can think of it like a rhino's horn on the front of your head where your elbow is. I drive that right into the throat or the chest or the chin of the attacker while drawing one-handed with my right hand, slightly rotating the gun, keeping the butt of the pistol against my ribs. And what that does is keep it back and away, enabling me to retain it, allowing me also to shoot accurately at what we would call contact distances. So very, very close. So if I'm driving forward, driving my left elbow into the chest, neck, or throat, chin of the bad guy, and I've got my right hand pistol drawn, butt of the pistol on the rib, my ribs, that allows me to shoot and keep them off balance by driving forward. So that's one of the examples of a technique that we would teach for someone who is getting rushed within 6 feet if they were armed.
At a much greater distance, if someone is a greater distance, what's your strategy change?
So if they're over 21 feet away, 20 feet away, What you're going to do is, and again, depending on if you're armed or unarmed, makes a big difference. I'm making the assumption that they're armed with a pistol. If they're armed with a pistol at that distance, we're going to do what we call offline movement. So if I run straight backwards, even at 20-some feet, they're going to win. If I run to the side, directly to the side, I can't move very quickly, and it allows them to track very easily to that distance. Offline movement is what's called flanking movement. So what I want to do is get to their side or their rear. So I'm going to be rushing in an arc to either one of their sides. It's kind of a forward 45-degree arcing movement. That arcing movement allows you to gain the advantage of having to make them twist, as well as they can't decrease the distance very quickly because of the rotational movement.
Now, a related question from a different viewer, Kaiser Johnson's, asks, how do you prevent a knife or firearm from being taken from you and used against you?
One word answer, training. So I can give you, as I just did, that technique of getting into that retention position with the offhand behind the head, elbow forward, pistol drawn, rotated out, pressed against the ribs in a retention type position. That's a technique that works in that situation. But the ability to do that under stress, especially reacting to a threat without thinking, takes a whole lot of training. When it comes to edged weapons, and this is another somewhat counterintuitive point, to me, if we're within about 12 feet, someone with a knife is scarier than someone with a gun. The reason being is when it comes to a firearm, I have to, in a split second in time, get a less than 1/3 of an inch piece of metal traveling at supersonic speeds onto a body. That's hard, right? You've got a moving target. You've got the gun that you have to aim. You have to pull the trigger at just the right time. You have to make sure that all the fundamentals of shooting are in place, that the round actually goes where you're aiming. When it comes to a knife, all I have to do is touch you with any part of the edge of that knife, and I'm going to cut you. And so when you're in close, a knife is actually much more dangerous, in my view, than a firearm. When you look at long guns, rifles or shotguns, it's even more the case, because by having the longer weapon, it creates more opportunities for me to either make sure that the gun is not pointed at me as the person being pointed at, or to take it away from you because of the use of leverage. So when you get into a close situation and you're dealing with a knife, that is some of the highest level training that is necessary to be good at that. And even if you do, there's a very good chance you're going to get cut anyway. So I look at a knife as a critical self-defense tool, but I also look at it as a tool that's going to take the most time to perfect. When it comes to actual technique that works, if you're carrying a knife, what we teach is a figure 8 pattern. So if you're making this figure 8 pattern in front of you with the edge of the blade, you can think of it as taking a lawnmower and picking it up and pointing the rotating blades at the bad guy. You want to create this wall of edged metal going back and forth so that anything that comes within striking distance of that gets cut. And that presents a very hard target for the bad guy.
Still on the topic of tools, another viewer, Philip Saunders, asks, how many loaded weapons should you keep in a house or in a particular room?
Again, I'll give you another simple one-word answer, enough. And that's going to vary, right? So with that being said, you have to take into account your individual situation, the number of weapons that you have, the layout of your house, where you spend the most time in your house, the threat profile that you're living against. If you live in a nice suburb with very low crime rates, there's a low chance of it being viciously attacked. If we live in a society that's broken down with roving bands of outlaws, that's a whole different story. In general, what we teach people is that wherever you spend large sections of time, it's good to have access to a firearm in a way that is secure. So I don't suggest leaving pistols in every drawer around the house, because then you run the risk of someone who is untrained gaining access to that gun and having a negligent discharge. So having a safe quick access safe mounted at various positions within the house, in the living room, in your bedroom, maybe in the kitchen. That's good. And again, the answer being enough is enough that you feel comfortable, that you don't have to live with unnecessary fear. What I do is I carry my firearm with me any minute that I'm awake, and I can legally do it. So when I'm at home, I have my pistol on my hip. When I go to bed, I have a shotgun and a quick access safe next to my bed. So I only have one mounted gun in my house because I'm carrying one the rest of the times. So for me, that works. For others, they like to have multiple guns in safes in major areas of their house. The general philosophy for what to do if someone attacks your house is going to be a 5-step process. First step is to gain and ready your defensive tool. So if my house comes under attack, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have a defensive tool ready and in my hand. The second step is to barricade. Barricade yourself in a position, put something in between you and that threat. Being able to have the ability to barricade, and what I mean by that is being able to even just lock a door. Most people's bedrooms are unable to be locked other than those little door locks. In all the bedrooms in our house, we have deadbolts and solid core doors with solid wood frames. Being able to do that allows us to hardpoint relatively easy in our house and give us more time to defend ourselves. After barricade, it's deter. So we want the person that's in our house to know that we have the capability to cause them harm and that we want them very clear directions to leave. So we start yelling out after readying our weapon, barricading, get out of my house, I'm armed, the police are on their way. We yell that repeatedly so that they have no question as to what we want and that we have the ability to cause them harm. The fourth step is to, if you're not under direct attack, meaning they're pounding through your barricaded door, is to call the police. Being able to get the resources to come as quickly as possible. We know that the average response time is 12 minutes, so it's up to us to defend ourselves and the police to clean up the mess, but we still want to get that ball rolling as quickly as possible. Then the last step, the fifth step, is to escape or defend yourself. So in any room in our house that we have the ability to barricade, we also have the ability to escape. So in the second and third floor rooms, we have ladders that we can put out so we can get out of the room, which is good for fire plans anyway. In our bedroom, we have a patio that allows us to jump down to a retaining wall and get out of the house. So we're always going to want to escape before we fight. And with that, we have high-power tactical flashlights in all the houses to be able to clear that outside space. So we're going to make sure that the bad guys aren't waiting for us outside. If we can't escape and we're still confronted with a threat to our safety, at that point we defend ourselves. And that's where we would use our firearm skills to defend ourselves from any threat to our safety or family safety.
On that same topic about having firearm skills, what ages do you consider appropriate for family members to be trained in firearms?
To me, that's completely up to the parents. They're going to be the best judge at the maturity level and coordination of their kids. I've seen teenagers that parents assessed as not ready to be around firearms, and I've seen four-year-old shooting and being very good at it. So for me personally, I started shooting at 5 years old, and I've shot my entire life, and it's been a huge part of my life. So to me, it's really up to the parents to assess not only the maturity level of their children, but also their physical skill level. But as early as they can start them, the better. Firearms are a wonderful thing. The ability to be in the shooting sports is great. I know here in Minnesota, the largest growing sport in high school is the shotgun sports, skeet traps, sporting clays. So being able to expose your children early on to firearms is also one of the best ways to keep them safe. The more that you keep firearms away from them and hide them in the closet, lock them up, the more that the children are going to be inclined to go and see them. You also can't account for what would happen in other houses. You may secure your firearms well, but your son's friend may not. And if you don't fill their minds with proper firearms handling, proper firearms safety, the ability to shoot safely, that black hole, that void is going to be filled with something, and generally it's filled with popular culture. And if you want your child to be educated by what's on TV as to how to handle firearms, you're setting yourself up for a big problem. So the best way to keep your kids safe around firearms is through education, through exposure at a very early age. What was interesting was my father is a Marine, and he had a very interesting way to educate me around firearms. I had access from 5 years old. I knew where all the guns were, where the keys were, where the ammunition was. And at any point in time, I could ask my dad to see the guns. I could have them come out. I could show them to a friend. But there was a caveat. If anyone touched the gun, they had to be cleaned, which means I had to clean them. So I had to take them all apart, clean them all, even if they hadn't been shot. And his point in doing that was twofold. One, to give me access whenever I wanted. Two, to have guns become a regular tool. It was no different than a screwdriver because I had to take them all apart. I had to clean them repetitively. The funny part about this is I get to the Naval Academy my freshman year, and they issue me my drill rifle, which is a demilitarized M1 Garand, so I couldn't even shoot it. And as soon as they gave it to me, I asked them, I said, where's the cleaning kit? And they looked at me like I was nuts. I said, well, I'm touching it. I need to clean the gun, right? You need to clean it. And so I got made fun of quite a bit my freshman year just because I honestly thought up until high school that if you touched the gun, you had to clean it. So it was, but it is a good way to get exposure to the kids as well as educate them in how they work.